Wow, look at the layers on that. Are you kidding? Are you kidding? It's giving farmer's market biscuit. Hello beautiful people, welcome back to my channel. I'm so excited that you're here and very excited to be sharing today's video. I am newly getting into baking. If you remember in my last video, I shared these sweet potato biscuits that I've been making. I've been testing this recipe just to get it right, and honestly I feel like I got it right. In today's video, I wanted to show you how I make the sweet potato biscuits, which I think you will truly enjoy. So let's go ahead and get into the recipe. I'll just go through the dry ingredients. So what I typically do, I just use all-purpose flour. I've not tried to make these with whole wheat or spelt flour or anything like that, but if your preference is one of those two, give it a try, get creative. I haven't tried it, so I cannot vouch for it. Maybe one day I'll give it a try. But for the recipe that I'm sharing today, I just use all-purpose flour, baking powder, baking soda. I also use salt, and then the last dry ingredient is a sweetener. So I'm actually using stevia leaf sweetener. If you want to do this with regular sugar, you absolutely can. I'm using a brown and a white stevia leaf sweetener. And then for our wet ingredients, we are going to make a sweet potato buttermilk, and typically buttermilk has a thicker consistency, and of the dairy-free milks that I have tried and enjoyed, I like to use cashew milk. I found that cashew milk tends to be the thickest. Now, does that mean you can't use any other milk? No, I have just always used cashew milk. You could also make cashew milk by soaking some cashews overnight and either juicing them or sending them through a blender with some water. I'll actually link a video in the description on how I've made my cashew milk in the past in case you want to give it a try. But in addition to the dairy-free milk for our buttermilk, I'm also going to be using some apple cider vinegar, and the other wet ingredient that we'll be using is some sweet potato puree. You can either use canned sweet potato puree, or you can actually just bake some sweet potatoes and then just blend them until they resemble, honestly, baby food like this. And the only other ingredient that I have not shown is dairy-free butter, and that is because I want to keep the dairy-free butter as cold as possible. I actually put it in the freezer overnight and then moved it to the refrigerator. Because we want these to be so flaky, the butter needs to be as cold as possible. And now we're gonna start by making the dairy-free buttermilk. So for our buttermilk, I'm just going in with 1 cup of cashew milk. I'm also gonna add about 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar. And if you don't have apple cider vinegar, or you don't want to use it, or maybe you're allergic, you can also use lemon juice and combine that with the dairy-free milk to get a vegan-friendly buttermilk, in case you didn't know. And then I also have the sweet potato puree. And then we just whisk everything together. So that just created this beautiful, the color is absolutely amazing. I don't think it really picks up well on camera, but if you decide to make this, you'll actually see it. It's just so pretty, but you can tell that it's thick. You can smell the acidity from the apple cider vinegar. We're just gonna put this in the refrigerator for about 10 minutes while we work on our dry ingredients. And so for this portion, all you're gonna need is a large mixing bowl, a spoon. You'll need a knife to cube your butter out. And I'm actually going to weigh my flour out using this food scale. If you don't have a food scale, that is absolutely okay. I have tried this by just using a measuring cup, which it also works as well. We're just gonna measure out 438 grams of flour, which is equivalent to about 3.5 cups. Okay, need just a little bit more. 441, we need to get to 438. Okay, 438. I measured that out, so we don't need this anymore. But now I'm gonna go on with my sweeteners. 1 tablespoon of a white sweetener of the white stevia leaf, and then 1 tablespoon of the brown stevia leaf, which again, if you want to use brown sugar, you absolutely can. I'm gonna go in with 2.5 teaspoons of baking powder, and then 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda, and then a decent little pinch of salt. Now we just whisk this all together. If you want to, you could also put this through a blender. So instead of putting everything in a bowl, you could just put it in a blender and pulse it really well. I've done it that way too. I don't have a preference over one or the other. I mean, if I typically would just use a bowl if my blender isn't clean. So use a blender, use a bowl, whichever you prefer. If you use a bowl, you're just gonna need a little bit of elbow grease. But the next thing we're gonna do is go ahead and cube out the butter, because that is what we're gonna add to the flour. And we wanna work fast because we don't want the butter to melt at all. We want these ingredients to stay as cold as possible. So we're about to chop this up and go ahead and throw it in. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but you do want cubes. So I'm using 1 cup of butter. That's essentially 2 butter sticks, or depending on which brand you buy, most of them will already be like considered 1 cup because of how many tablespoons are in there. It'll say like 1 stick is half a cup or 1 block is a whole cup. So just be sure to read the details on whatever butter it is that you plan to buy. I just had to take off my rings because we're about to get our hands dirty, but let's work fast. And then we're just going to fold it in like this. We want to kind of coat the cubes in flour, and then we'll begin. Your hands are going to get dirty. If you have gloves, use them, but then we're just going to start pressing in on the butter so that it kind of flattens out like that. And another reason why we want the butter to be as cold as possible, practically probably frozen before you even add it in here, is because that helps with the flakiness of the biscuit. So it's like the colder the butter is, the flakier it'll be, based off what I've learned. I'm over here talking like I'm just a baking pro, but I've just been really like excited to bake more and try this out. So I hope you all try this recipe. This is what we're working with so far. You don't want to overwork, but you also don't want to underwork it, you know? And the consistency should be so that like if you squeeze a few pieces like this, it kind of holds firm, but it still breaks apart. And if you feel like this has started to, like the butter has started to melt a little bit, you could also throw it in the refrigerator for about 10 minutes just to help the butter kind of firm up a bit. You see how I did that? Yes. So I just threw the flour and butter mixture into the refrigerator because I wanted to tidy up in my kitchen a little bit. But our next step is going to be to slowly add in our sweet potato buttermilk. Just going to start to slowly pour this in. I would say do it in about 1/4 cup increments because we don't want this to have too much liquid, but we also don't want it to be too dry. So I would definitely recommend just doing it in small increments, 1/4 cup at a time, because there is a chance you might not use all of this either. Probably used about half of it. Yeah, that is looking great. Okay, I think this is perfect. Now the next thing we have to do is dump this onto a clean and dry surface so that we can begin to shape the biscuits. So I would recommend go ahead, if you haven't already, and wash off, clean off an area that you plan to, start forming the biscuits in. And now I'm just adding down some flour so that we can go ahead and roll the biscuit dough out. And you can add some flour to your hands as well. But let's go ahead and roll this out, and we're gonna begin to kind of press it together. You'll notice that it starts to crumble, and that's okay. We don't want these to have too much liquid, and we're going to start to shape these. You can see it's starting to form a bit more, which is exactly what we want. I like to just, you can see like some of the butter chunks in here, but I like to do this and fold it over. Flatten it out a little bit more and fold it over. Flatten it out some, take it and fold it over again. I don't have all the fancy gadgets or tools, so I'm okay with that. But the next thing that I do, after kind of shaping it a little bit, cut them into 4s. I layer it on top of each other, and then I press it down. That's gonna help us get layers. You can add a little bit more flour down as well. Then I just use this to kind of roll it out. You can use a knife to help shape it. Or if you have professional tools, you can also use those too. I don't, so I just use what I have. One day I will, once I really get serious into this baking world. But yeah, I just do that and try to get it as sharp as you possibly can, or as sharp as you want to, because then next we're just going to go ahead and cut the biscuits out. They should look like this, so you should be able to see the layers. This makes me really happy to see. And then I just have a baking sheet that I added parchment paper to. We're gonna add the biscuits to the baking sheet. If you want to cook them today, throw these in the freezer. We're gonna freeze them for a minimum of 10 minutes. I'm probably gonna do about 20 minutes or so, only because I've been recording, which means these have been out a little longer than normal. If you're not ready to cook these at all, you can wrap them up and just freeze them until you are ready to consume them. Just took our biscuits out of the oven. They are solid and firm. I am just so excited with how these look. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I'm only gonna bake 6 of them. I got 8 in total. So I'm just gonna add 6 of them to a baking sheet. And I'm gonna put the other 2 back in the freezer. We're just gonna brush these with some butter. And I'll put some of my butter recommendations in the description. But this is going to be so delicious. I saw somewhere that said, since we have them sitting in the freezer like this, if you bake them upside down, it's supposed to make them rise more. So I'm gonna actually try that with a couple of these. And we'll see if that actually works. I have the oven already heated up to 375 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm gonna put these in there for about 20 to 25 minutes and just keep a close eye on them. You need to make these biscuits. They smell so delicious right now. I just had them in for 20 minutes, but I decided to add an extra 5 minutes because I wanted them to kind of brown a little bit more. And since everybody's oven is different, I would just recommend just keeping a close eye on it. And then if you feel like you want them to be a bit more brown and golden on the top, then add an additional 5 minutes. But oh my gosh, they smell so good. I know my husband is about to be so excited because he loves these biscuits so much. I did include them as part of my what I eat in a week video where I had the tofu egg patty and the tempeh bacon and I put it on there. Y'all, that was so good. But anyway, I just whipped together some of that butter and then I added in some of my brown stevia sweetener as well. I'm gonna brush this on top once they come out, y'all. These are gonna be so delicious. I'm so hyped because they truly remind me of biscuits that you would get at the farmer's market. And I say that because like when you get biscuits from the farmer's market, they're not perfect in the aesthetic or the shape and all the things, but they are flaky and they taste good. Ooh, you know what I think would also be really good? I want to do like a vegan cheddar chive. That would be so delicious. But anyway, I'm gonna take these biscuits out of the oven, brush them with a little bit of this sweetened plant-based butter mixture that I made, and we're gonna give it a try. Okay, they are fresh out the oven, and this is what they look like. You can tell that they are so flaky. Honestly, I think they may be flakier than they've ever been. Like, just look at it. Wow. Are you kidding? Are you kidding? Look at the layers on that. Wow. I am so proud of myself. Look at the layers on this. Oh my gosh, I'm so proud of me. Y'all, I'm about to sit here and eat a whole biscuit. Get into it. It's giving farmer's market biscuit. This is delicious. Who is she? Who is she? It's much later in the day and I just had to come back on here because my husband is about to try one of the biscuits now. Putting a little bit of that butter mixture. It's ready for you.
This is my big break?
Yes, this is your big break. Okay. I already knew he would like it. Like, I made these. This is probably my. I've made these a bunch, pretty much.
Do it again.
The first time, I'm trying to think, or maybe the second time when it was like starting to get better. He was like, "Can I have this with the lasagna?" Like, I'm like, lasagna? You're supposed to have garlic bread, but let me have a piece. Yeah.
It's so good.
Thanks, pumpkin. And if you are looking for more holiday inspired meals, I do have a digital cookbook that I'll have linked in the description box. Has everything from my vegan mac and cheese in there, some crispy oyster mushrooms, collard greens, black eyed peas, all the things you need for this holiday season. I'll also link in the description box some of my past holiday inspired recipe videos. So be sure to check out the links in the description. Thank you so much for watching this video and I will see you here next week.